what is the best type of diet for you to stick to that you'll find the best results to, right? And that's up, guys. Andy from HPH here. Today we're going to be going over a video called Genetics Linked to Those Who Become Vegan, Vegetarian, a Study. I just came across this video by Good Morning America, so news channel, news source, and it does kind of seem like every week they come out with, oh, a new study claims this, a new study shows this, and we're all supposed to believe it. So I thought I'd weigh in with my 2 cents here. If you don't know who I am, my name's Andy. I run HPH Genetics, which is a personalized health company that focuses on your genetics to optimize your health. So we all have genetic risk for certain diseases, and so I don't believe that all natural, at least, and even some unnatural, but all natural care should be sort of generalized. I believe that we now have the power to personalize care for everybody. So kind of arguing what is the best health advice for everybody is kind of a weird question, whereas we should sort of be answering whereas we should sort of be answering what is the best health advice for you. And so that's what we focused on. We look at your genetic risk for diseases, and we're able to pair you up with some coaches that will guide you along the way and help you optimize your health. But for now, let's check out this video. It's a short one, 2 minutes long, so we'll weigh in.
All right, Dr. Darian is back with us now, and there's
that is way too quickly.
a new study that shows a connection between genetics and vegetarian and vegan diets. This is really...
Yeah, so I mean, off the bat, I know they just started talking, but I'm interested to see if it's more of an association claim, because it says genetics linked to those who become vegan or vegetarian. So I'm wondering if it's going to be like there's certain genetics that they found in this study of people that were vegan that were like similarities, not necessarily a causation, but more of an association. So we'll see.
Interesting.
I find this stuff really interesting, this world of individualized, personalized dietary planning. So this study was recently published this week, and it found that there are specific genetic traits that are associated to those who are able to stick better to that vegetarian lifestyle. So
yeah, so it is an association study, so probably like a cohort or some sort of retrospective study. So if you don't know what that really means, is that they took people that were already vegan or vegetarian and compared them to non-vegan vegetarian, and they looked at, I guess, the genetic association between these two groups, and they found that of the group that was vegan vegetarian, they all had similar genetics or some sort of gene, I guess, that they found that was a strong commonality in this group, the vegan vegetarian, that was not found in this non-vegan vegetarian group. And so it's not a causation necessarily, and it might not be a gene that's necessarily linked specifically to being able to digest veggies well, or, you know, vegan foods better than meats, but there could be strong associations there, and I'll sort of make my sense on like causation in a second as opposed to association, but I'll let them speak.
It's for me, when I look at it, I go, oh, maybe that's why it's hard for me to stick to it. Maybe I don't carry these genetic traits. But it opens up a new question and a whole world of the possibility of a future where we test your blood, we find out specifically what diet matches you perfectly, and then we figure out how to get you on that plan to optimize your outcome.
Yeah, so that's really where I do think the world is kind of going at this point. And so up until the point of maybe like 10, 20 years ago, health was more of seeing like general recommendations. So we see like, you know, in general, we should exercise, we should eat well. And then from there, the arguments after that is kind of like, what does that mean? Like, what is eating well? What is that? And then we argue from there, like, what type of diet is best? And I don't think that's necessarily the question we should be asking. We're trying to answer a foolish question with foolish answers. It's not what type of diet is best. Because then you have people that are on the carnivore side that are like, look what it did for me. It did really well. And then you have people on the vegan side that are like, look what it did for me. It did really well. And that's the point. It's look what it did for you specifically. And they're going to have other people that try it, and then they're not going to find as much success as you did, right? They might find a little bit of success just because they might be going from like processed foods to like natural foods, which is of course going to be a little bit better. But I do think that people have different experiences with different diets, and the only differences that we have as humans really is just slight changes in our genetics. And so if we can measure that, then we'd be able to determine what is the best type of diet for you to stick to that you'll find the best results to, right? And that's really what it's about. What is something that your body actually wants to eat? What does it want to thrive on? What kind of fitness? What kind of like health parameters is it interjecting upon? And I think that's kind of where we're going to start to see the world, because the human genome was just finished screening maybe like 20 years ago, and then we're now really just starting to like decode it at a high accuracy level to where we can actually implement it into our lives. And he's excited about that too.
Yeah, I told you actually in Atlanta I was tested to see which diets work for me, and it involves eating chicken, protein, and not fasting in the morning. So does this?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, it says for him that he found that he thrives better more on things like chicken. And again, I don't think these genetic tests are meant to say like this specific food is good for you. It's more so to say like what groupings of food is probably not for you. And so what probably happened for him was that, and again, I haven't seen his test. I'm not a doctor, right? I only have my master's in physiology. I can't prescribe to him or diagnose him with anything. But based on general conclusions that I can infer, is basically that he is not able to handle saturated fats quite well. And so things like red meat are probably not optimal for his diet. Can he still eat them and be healthy? Sure. Is he going to be his healthiest or feel his best? Probably not. And so that might come down to a gene like the LPA gene, which encodes for a protein called LP little a, which is a cholesterol marker. If you have more of this from baseline, the more cholesterol you eat, the more cholesterol is going to stick to LP little a and then stick on your arterial walls. And so that might cause some like blood clots, some plaque development, and then might cause some heart problems as well, right? And so that's where they screen his genetics and say, okay, you'd probably be better eating things like chicken, which basically means lean protein sources that are not high in that saturated fat, right? And so without these genetic tests, you'd have probably the carnivore people that were like, well, you should eat carnivore diet because look how healthy it made me and all my markers are great. And then so let's say he took this advice, right? And he started eating a carnivore diet, things that were high in saturated fats. And so while the person that suggested it to him, they don't have that LP little a polymorphism gene where it's like they don't overproduce it, but he might, right? He would take that diet and it would do him some harm possibly if he ate all like strictly carnivore and like high saturated fats and there was like high cholesterol development, high plaque development. He might actually be hurting himself even though he thinks he's doing a healthy diet because someone else said it was healthy, right? And so that's where I make my claims to where it's like we shouldn't necessarily generalize, or we should probably ask the right questions. It's not what type of diet is best, it's what's best for you. And now we have more of an accuracy to do that. Also interesting, he said that he thrives on a diet that is not intermittent fasting, which is very interesting. So a lot of people now, they think that fasting is sort of like the gold standard of health. It's going to make you the healthiest thing possible. And again, I think it's comes down to some people, just differences in people. So some people might thrive on an intermittent fasting diet. And this does come down to lifestyle too. Some people just like snacking and eating, and so that's just going to overeat calories in the long term. So if you are able to sort of hold off till later in the day, in general, you're probably not going to eat as much just because you're limiting that window of like when you can eat. It's just a tool to help you lose calories. It's not the end all be all, but maybe this comes down to glucose regulating genetics, whether that be like insulin secreting hormone, basically TCF7L2 is one of those genes that's implicated in fasting glucose, SLC2A2. These are just genes that regulate glucose control. And so if he has already low levels of glucose in his blood from fasting levels, then fasting even further would probably push him into low blood sugar. Would probably push him into lower blood sugar, which isn't necessarily healthy as well. That might give him some low blood pressure, not optimal for health, blood thinning, whatever it might be. So, so here's an example of a health parameter where people are like, oh, well, intermittent fasting is great for everybody. It's healthy. For him, it's not, right? And so, and it's not to say that it's unhealthy. It's just to say that it's not the most healthy or the most optimal for his health. And I think that's where we should start looking to personalize health. And now that we have that option to have the genetic screen, I think a lot of people should sort of look that way.
This really work. Again, these studies are limited, they're small, but I think that there's a fascinating future for this. I think when we look at, 10, 20 years from now, there's a possibility that you'll be able to get a test and it will tell you how much of protein from animal sources versus vegetable sources you can have. And then you can use that plan to, again, combine it with physical activity, working out, get the best out.
Yeah, and again, this should be combined with, a good plan, a good exercise plan, a good optimal like health optimization plan to where you can actually put this into practice, because it's one thing to know, it's one thing to actually do it. So, at least I could speak for my own company, myself. So we connect you to high quality coaches that are able to guide you through that process, backed by physicians. So that's just something we do. If you go through other parties, I won't name any name, but sometimes they just do the test itself and they kind of say, okay, well, you do it. If you don't really know too much about, saturated fats or cholesterol genes and things like that, it might be a little difficult. So I think personally it helps to have that coaches. But if not, I do think in general, in terms of societal, generalities, I think that this is definitely a very interesting marker within the next 10, 20 years that a lot of people will start to see, especially now that it's starting to become more accurate. And so there's a few companies now that are over the 99% accuracy in terms of looking at the genetic, they're called polymorphisms or mutations, basically, that might be the differences in what people can actually metabolize and things like that.
Outcome you can get.
How much of this deals with your blood type?
I know both of you have asked this question. I don't know, many may not know, but both of you are universal donors of O blood type. Yes, we are. And you're very proud of that. And I will be. Unfortunately, all of those studies, they're very limited. I wouldn't base all of that information just simply on your blood type.
Yeah, so on your blood type, that really just comes down to one gene. It's called the ABO gene, which, I mean, if you know about blood types, A, B, O, AB, that's really all it can be. And so that's really just looking at if you're creating a diet based on your blood type, you're creating a diet that's based on one gene, and the human genome has 20,000 genes. So you're really getting 1/20,000th of the picture of that you're supposed to be looking at. So I would look more into either whole genome sequencing, which screens your whole genetics, and what's called exomes and introns and exons, but like your exomes as well. And then there's specific exome sequencing. And so your exomes are like the protein coding genes. And so there's all this genetic material, and then there's like little snippets that actually get coded into proteins. That'll be the things that you want to look out for, like how much of that's in there. That'll regulate, proteins are the things that regulate your body processes. So you can either get the whole genome sequencing, which also might look at things like methylation, so vitamin deficiencies, there's a methylation deficiency, the 5-MTHFR gene, which would be a problem in methylating vitamin B compound. And so you might be, low in vitamin B. It also has interactions with creatine, so you might need a little bit more creatine. So we can look at methylation as well. And the exomes just look at the protein coding genes from there as well. But you'll get a very good picture looking at just the exome sequencing. But I find whole genome sequencing to give you the best overall picture, and it's roughly the same price, so you might as well just get the whole genome sequence. And again, a lot of people are worried about the insurance aspects of it, the selling data aspects of it. There's definitely shady companies and shady stuff in general that goes on with this industry. So make sure you are choosing the provider that is best for you. Personally, I wouldn't myself go through insurance. At least the company that I've built, we don't go through insurance, just because some insurance companies, and again, you could check with your insurance provider, but they might look at that to determine your health risk, and they might switch your life insurance policy, denied, accepted kind of status based on that. So if that's something you're worried about, I would be wary of that. And then make sure that the company is, destroying your sample. There's high levels of privacy within there, and that's kind of something that we've strived to provide here with your privacy, and make sure that everything's just for you, not for anybody else, and try to keep it privatized and keep you healthy. So that's pretty much it for this video.
But I'm so proud that both of you. If anyone hasn't told me yet, I'm really proud of you.
Yeah, are you?
So that's pretty much it for this video. In general, yeah, I do think that genetic testing, even way beyond just like health and fitness, this was just in determining like a good diet for you. So again, we talked about things like, saturated fat, and that might deter you or bring you toward carnivore diet, or like veganism, or just determine your macro percentages, how much protein you can digest, things like that. But also in terms of disease risks. And so there's a high genetic risk in terms of like any disease. We could see anywhere between like as low as things like 10-20%, but all the way up to like 80% genetic heritability in these diseases. And then also there's two sides of genetics. There's the heritable ones that you might get from like your family, and then there's just your genetics that undergo random mutations. As our cells divide, all of our cells have DNA in them, and so when we're dividing, sometimes there's errors that occur in that dividing process, and we divide millions and millions of cells on a very rapid basis. So there's a lot of errors that might happen. Our body's very good at regulating those errors and making sure that they don't happen, but they can, and some of them might be detrimental. So it's nice to screen that and kind of know where you're at, something that might not be heritable. And so you're thinking like, okay, well, I don't have any family history of diabetes, but if you just undergo random mutation or your lifestyle impacts that, then you might have that non-heritable genetic risk for diabetes that you might not have known. So it's important to screen that, I think, in terms of general health as well. So that's it for now. If you guys are interested in completing any DNA tests to see your health and fitness risks, we also connect you to a coach that is able to guide you through that process, so you have your results and then you can step by step not even take the guesswork out of your health and fitness and sort of just get to your optimized health levels. We can do that for you. We also, as I mentioned before, we keep it private. So between the company and you, it could be anonymous as well if you do so wish. We don't go through insurance, so we try to limit the negative possibilities from that aspect, and keep it private, making sure all your information is secure, and that's kind of the things we do. So if you guys are interested in that, click the link below or just visit the website, hphgenetics.com. And if you guys are just interested in other free health aspects and just information in general, subscribe to the channel. I also have a podcast. Everything's linked below. Follow the socials, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it might be. But hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.